Is the December 8th meeting of the Ordinance Committee. We will provide time for public comment on any item that's not on the agenda, not something we're going to talk about today. Is there any comment, Ms. Warner, any speaker slips on items that are not on the agenda?
No, they're all on items.
Okay, very good. And yes, would you call the attendance of the Ordinance Committee, please?
Yes. Councilmember Hotchkiss?
Here.
Councilmember Rouse?
Here.
And Councilmember Murillo is not here.
Okay, very good. So noted. We have also before us a request to move the order of the two items we have and switch item 1 and item 2. Mr. Hotchkiss, any objections to that?
Not at all.
No problem with that, Mr. Kalan? Okay, then we'll go forward, and then we'll begin with item 2. Would you read item 2, please, Ms. Wan?
Yes. Item 2 is, the subject is ordinance allowing taxicab loading and unloading in green, yellow, and white zones.
Very good. And do we have a presentation of Mr. Bailey?
Good afternoon, Ordinance Committee members. My name is Derek Bailey, and I'm with the City's Public Works Department in the Traffic Engineering section. With me this afternoon is Deputy City Attorney John Doimus. The first recommended ordinance change we have for you to consider today is some changes to where taxi cabs can pick up and drop off in the city. Currently, Santa Barbara City Municipal Code in section 10.48, it prohibits taxi cabs from loading and unloading in green zones, yellow zones, and white zones. And it also requires us, when we establish a taxi stand, that we should paint an outline on the pavement. We are recommending a change to that. In fact, we're recommending that the City Council amend that ordinance to allow taxi cab loading and unloading in green zones, yellow zones, and white zones. As a matter of practicality, it is really difficult for taxi cabs to find a legal place to load and unload their passengers, especially in downtown Santa Barbara. Currently, the only places where they legally can load are taxi cab stands, and in the downtown area, that's right beside the old Greyhound station, and in otherwise legal parking spaces like 75-minute parking, and most of the time, those are occupied. So for the taxi cab operators to find a legal place to load and unload their passengers is challenging. If we open it up to green zones, yellow zones, and white zones, that opens up a lot of opportunities to pick up and drop off passengers. And oftentimes these colored areas are vacated because they are short-term operations for loading, unloading, and parking. So we are recommending that this be allowed. But we're also recommending that a limit be put on that if loading and unloading activities take place in those zones, that they can't stand and occupy those spaces, because it is important the commercial vehicles especially have access to our loading zones in the downtown area. But if it's a quick drop-off or pickup of a passenger and then move on, we see that as an appropriate use of the curb space.
Quick being 2-3 minutes?
The way we've recommended it in the ordinance is we say, well, actively loading and unloading. So that's just while a passenger is getting in and out. So if they're in the act of getting in and out of the taxi cab, then it would be legal.
Okay.
No, sounds like a good idea. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Is that the entire presentation?
That's the presentation.
Thank you very much. I like those kind of presentations. So we do have some comment slips about this, and I understand that there may be somebody yielding time. So if you are yielding time, please raise your hand when I call your name. The first speaker is Eric. And Eric, are you yielding time? Yes. Oh, okay. Who is the speaker that is going to speak? Jonathan. Okay, that's Jonathan McKee? Yes. Okay, so anyone else yielding to Mr. McKee? Okay, and you are? Okay, and is that it? Oh, and are you, and your name is? Thank you very much. Okay, so I have a total of 8 minutes. And your name is? Did you have a speaker slip? Oh, okay. Is that one? That one?
That's him, yeah.
Which one? Mm-hmm. This one over here? Okay. Okay, you are at our ultimate limit of 10 minutes. So you do have,
Okay, thank you.
let me set this up here.
Okay. Well, before you set that, I would like to use that overhead projector. And does anyone in the room know how to operate that? Okay, so,
Just
okay.
1 minute then, please.
Thank you.
It's ready to go for you, sir.
Oh, it is? Okay, okay, ready to go.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, my name is Jonathan McKee. I'm a taxi driver. I drive a door-to-door taxi.
Is your microphone?
Yeah, we need to make sure.
Yeah, we need to be at the mic.
I'm going to be moving back and forth.
Well, you need to be in front of a mic so we're on the
Okay.
record while you speak, please.
Okay, if you would please, Mr. Bailey, pull up page 3 of your little talk that you did,
I
please.
want to go back to this.
Page 3. And I may lose a lot of time just because of the
10 minutes is a lot of time.
technology. Yeah. Okay, so page 3. If you note, on the very, very, very bottom of page 3, it focuses specifically on the red zone to reinforce the enforcement of the red zone. Okay? Now, the red zone says, and this is where I want to use the overhead projector, so I guess Mr. Bailey, skip to page 3 because I'm into my time. Can you see this okay?
You guys are 4. There it is. So it's preset 1.
Okay, 3.
no, no.
I'll take 3. I'll take 3.
If you turn the mic on, you can do your entire presentation right there.
Okay. The green light means it's on? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, see, right here it says reinforce that red zones are no stopping zones. No stopping zones for red zones. This is ordinance. Okay, let me slow down just a little bit because I'm really excited to be here, first of all. Kathy Murillo, we've spoken before, face to face. Mr. Rouse, I know you're a business restaurant owner, and Mr. Hodgkiss, I've just seen you around town. So I appreciate all of you doing this. This is the taxi ordinance. That it's not the taxi ordinance. It is an ordinance that talks about transportation, and it does deal heavily upon the taxi drivers because during the nighttime. Time out.
No, I didn't, actually.
Well, I'm nervous, so does it make you nervous me walking around?
No, but we need you to be at the microphone while you're speaking so it goes on the record properly. Thank you.
Oh, there's the camera. Okay. Okay, that's better. If you look at these ordinances, and I can't see them very well. Down here, zoning. Anyway, these were written in the year 2005. The city took a lot of time to work with the taxi drivers and with the city ordinance committee. It took about 2 years actually, to create this ordinance that was written in 2005. Now, in this one, I appreciate the brief display they did, but I'm having this code right here, 1048050. Okay, this code grants permission herein. Permission herein granted to stop or park for purposes of loading or unloading passengers shall include the loading or unloading for personal baggage, but shall not extend beyond the time necessary before and in no event more than 3 minutes. This is a 3-minute exemption to all of the colored zones that are marked on the curbs. So I'm going to use the word disingenuous. The ordinance above shows the colored zones. Here's a red zone. Here's a yellow zone. and then all the like, and then there's a white zone, and then there's a green zone, and then there's a blue zone. So for some reason, and I did talk to Mr. Doimus in person in his office about specifically code .050. And I told him that this gives taxi drivers or any driver permission to load and unload not to exceed 3 minutes anywhere in the city of Santa Barbara. Anywhere. Red zone, green zone, blue zone, white zone. 3 minutes. And Mr. Hodgkiss, you asked how much time is necessary. When they wrote this ordinance in 2005, it was contemplative specifically. It takes about 3 minutes to load and unload. Now, I would like to contrast this with the new ordinance that they're trying to create. And we are here, taxi drivers, objecting to the wording and the actual changing of this rule. The impression I'm getting from the staff is that they're taking, in my opinion, a well-written ordinance that provides for businesses of the taxi and provides for the necessity of people in the city to get into a vehicle wherever it's necessary to load and unload a passenger, not to exceed 3 minutes. It's already in there. And having discussions with the city, and let me take back just a moment, and this may be fatal to me. I have sued the City of Santa Barbara Police Department twice, writ of mandamus, once in 2012 and once in 2014, I believe, Mr. Doimus. Those years might be accurate. Anyway, specifically because the police department was not following vehicle code. And through the legal wrangling of the court system, we have accomplished the police department to follow the vehicle code. Now, the city staff is coming back at the taxi department and enforcing that last line on page 3. They want to reinforce the red zones. A ticket for the picking up in a red zone is $58. That $58 goes directly to the police department's fund. No one else gets it. Okay, now they're changing this ordinance. Do you guys have the language of the draft in front of you? Okay, I'll put it in front of you. Okay, specifically, what they're doing on one of these is they're giving the police department a huge amount of power over the taxi drivers. If you go to section little number D, E of the ordinance, the last 3 words, or right here, I hope you can see those. Okay? That says with the doors open. So you can stop in a zone, not a red zone according to these rules. So, but if you stop in a green zone or a yellow zone or whatever zone, you have to get out and open your doors so somebody with a walker can walk to your car. Otherwise, the police officer has literal authority to write you a $58 ticket in any one of those zones. So my point in this, and then number F is the clincher. They're reasserting the position of the police department, and they're negating the ordinance that was written in 2005 by changing the language and adding number F. When it's underlined, those are brand new words that they want to put into the ordinance. And they're saying, no taxi cab shall stop, stand, or park in a red zone. Now, I know you guys know downtown, the 400 block of State Street is completely 100% painted red. It's 2 lanes. It's painted red. That's a moneymaker for the city. The police department, on New Year's Eve, I got a $58 ticket 6 minutes into the new year because I picked up 3 ladies on New Year's Eve night, and I paid that $58 ticket because it's a red zone. That's the only reason. Took them longer to write me a ticket than for the ladies to load and unload. Okay. Now, I have 1 minute left. I'm going to go back up to, and you guys are going to, I'm going to ask you guys to look, you're the ordinance committee. We're recommending that you do not recommend this to the city council yet. This is not well written. It's been picked apart, and it destroys the 2005 ordinance as it's written. I can't ask you to answer this, but my feeling is none of the people except for Ms. Murillo 2 years ago have talked to any taxi drivers regarding this ordinance. So it plays heavy on the taxi drivers downtown. It is their business, and we've got other things coming down the pipeline. We recommend that this be stayed and not moved forward until the ordinance committee is clear about the needs of the taxi industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, questions, Mr. Hotchkiss?
Yeah, if you could come back up to the mic for a second. So you said keep it as it is. Yes. Until what? What are your other suggestions?
Don't change it. The way it's written in 2005 works. Okay. What's happening is, if I may answer that, the police department doesn't like code .050 because it gives permission to load and unload not to exceed 3 minutes. That takes a lot of power away from the police department.
Including the red zone, right?
Including the red zone.
So why did you get the ticket, and why didn't you fight it?
Because the police department is intentionally misinterpreting the law. And I took this to the city attorney's office with Mr. Doimus. I pointed to this law, and body language is a lot. I got hesitation. And let me show you just one final thing in the code. It goes further on it, if I may, to answer your question. It's .050, and it's on the bottom right here. And it integrates the above code. Part C says, all other limitations to loading and unloading of materials and passengers described in section 1048.040A2. 1048.040A2. It's this one right here. It happens to be the yellow zone. So are additionally incorporated in this section. So the taxi drivers can occupy the yellow zone as it's written up here in the .040. Otherwise, all citizens of the city of Santa Barbara have a right, permission hearing granted, to load and unload not to exceed 3 minutes.
Thank you. May I continue?
Yes, please.
Staff, please. Mr. Doimus, comment on this, if you would.
Thank you. Councilmember Hotchkiss, Ordinance Committee. There is no permission whether the code 1048, 050, or this new recommended ordinance gives permission to stop in a red zone. It's clear it does not allow to stop, stand, park in any red zone in the city, except permitted by the vehicle code. And these are instances that are being discussed that are allowed per the vehicle code. So there is no stopping, standing, parking in any red zone in the city. It's a red zone. Clear as day. Yes.
In a red zone, you can't do that. Mr. Bailey, have you got some comments on this?
Councilmember Hotchkiss, Ordinance Committee members, just to add to what John said, we as the city, we can't override the vehicle code. Like even if we wanted to redefine what a red zone is, the vehicle code says it's no stopping, standing. So, but really the reason behind that, the purpose of red zones, and the reason we install red zones is for safety and for traffic flow. I mean, the red zones that are on State Street are in place for safety because we don't want people stopping in certain locations, like blocking a bike lane. We oftentimes put red curb near intersections for sight lines. We oftentimes put red curb a little bit on either side of driveways so people can maneuver in and out of their driveways without vehicles parking too close in. So we operationally, we don't even want that to happen. There's really isn't an appropriate location to say that this red zone is okay to stop in and then this one isn't. It's not okay.
How about blue zones? Handicap zones?
I believe that I don't know if it would be in conflict with the vehicle code or not to allow temporary loading or unloading. That I don't know.
So if I understand right, the staff's view is that this is liberalizing where taxis can stop legally.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Murillo?
Thank you. So what is Mr. McGee referring to with that that he's pointing to that says it's okay for taxi cabs to stop in the red?
John, do you want to?
Please.
Sure, thank you, Councilmember Murillo. If you look at the section referring to in that one, it's 1048.050. There it talks about commercial stopping and standing in certain zones and permission to unload passengers. This is not the section here, the ordinance being proposed today is not in conflict with the ordinance that Mr. McKee is referring to. In fact, while this section allows 3 minutes time to unload passengers, we're saying with this ordinance, you can unload as long as the passengers are unloaded, are complete. We're not having a stopwatch in that instance and saying that they won't be ticketed for these instances. So the ordinance code that we are proposing today is not in conflict with that code. So this is just in terms of just for taxi cab drivers to bring clarity to the situation.
Okay, so a taxi cab cannot stop in the red zone ever.
No, they cannot.
Okay, that seems clear. And if something is that needs to be clarified, if there's something in our code that's being interpreted that way, we need to clarify it, I think. Right? So, but otherwise, are you happy with being given permission to stop in the yellow and the green?
No, because we already have that permission for 3 minutes. What this code is doing is it's not liberalizing the taxis. It is pigeonholing the taxis into, in my opinion, martial law. It gives complete discretion to the police officers. Now, instead of us being able to go to court and argue about this 3 minutes permission to load and unload, now the police can just circle a code and say no taxi shall stop, stand, or park in a red zone, period. So this is in direct conflict with the 3 minutes. And if it wasn't in direct conflict, there would be no need for them to put these new words into the ordinance. So the way it's written now does not need to be picked apart to give more power to the police department. It doesn't help the taxi drivers. It doesn't help the public get into their car. It doesn't help anybody except the police department. It gives more power to the discretion of a police officer, and now he can label it. It's violation of Vehicle Code 10.48.130F. No taxi shall stop, stand, or park in a red zone.
Thank you, Mr. McGee. Mr. Chair, I think I'm persuaded by what Derek Bailey is saying, that the red zone ensures safety and it keeps cars from being in the bike lane. And I mean, truth be told, people sometimes stop at the red curb at their own peril, right? They know if they get busted, they're going to get a ticket. I'm not saying taxi drivers, I'm saying people that are dropping off a friend or groceries or something, especially on the west side. We're so congested there. So I get it. I think I'm persuaded that the red zone should be off limits to parking and unloading. And I'm sorry. But I wasn't even sure that was the question we were being asked today. You've surprised me today, Mr. McKee, with your presentation. But
well, if I may comment
definitely
to
something to think about. I think you've been given a lot of time to talk. It's at the chair's discretion. But
okay. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr. Hotchkiss.
Well, just an illustration to disagree with the speaker. The police do not have discretion now, and they will not have discretion in the future. We're just reinforcing the red zones, correct?
Councilmember Hodges is correct.
All right.
And one last question, Mr. Bailey. Are there any block faces on State Street that are on 100% red that you're aware of? I remember we had a discussion about taxi turnouts a long time ago and back and forth. And
Councilmember Rouse, I believe the 400 block is the only block, though.
So in
there
order
are loading zones and pullouts in the rest of the blocks going up State Street.
the 400 block is the one that's, as you can pull up out of your.
Right, between Gutierrez and Haley. Yep.
So then the taxi would have to necessarily get his fare on a side street or something adjacent to that. Okay, very good. All righty. Back to the committee.
I move the staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay. I'm sorry, sir. It's public comment's been done. Sir, we're to the committee now. Okay. We have it. Got it moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Passes. Thank you. The next, which is actually item 1. Ms. Wan, would you read that article, please?
Yes, item 1. We have switched the order of these, so this originally was item 2. It's the, originally item 2 was the taxi cab, and now item 1 is the ordinance to prohibit parking over 72 hours and parking of inoperable vehicles in city-owned parking lots.
All right, very good. And the staff presentation is Mr. Bailey once again.
Good afternoon. Derek Bailey again with the City Public Works Department. With me for this item is Victor Garza, Public Works Department of the city's downtown parking group. This is to amend the ordinance that regulates parking in city-owned parking lots, the downtown parking. So the current ordinance, Santa Barbara Municipal Code 10.44, there is no restriction on the length of time vehicles can be stored in city-owned lots. And there's also no restriction on inoperable vehicles in city-owned lots. And I'll let Victor speak to some of the issues that they've observed because there are no restrictions. But our recommendation is to incorporate into an ordinance a 72-hour parking limit in city-owned lots, except that the Public Works Director may issue permits if there's a need to go beyond that 72 hours. And as well, no inoperable vehicles in city-owned lots longer than 2 hours. And those are, the downtown parking lots. That's not the waterfront parking lots along Cabrillo Boulevard. So, again, that's my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any public speakers on this item? I don't have any speakers lists for this item. So, Ms. Murillo.
Well, on the second item, so if somebody's car breaks down, they might need longer than 2 hours to get it out of there. Is that a concern? And I ask that as someone who's had old cars that have broken down.
Councilmember Murillo, Victor Garza, Downtown Parking Superintendent. What we're talking about are cars that are left over multiple nights and not necessarily a couple hours or a slight breakdown. It is when we see cobwebs on the tires or dirt starting to accumulate, it's obviously being stored, it's abandoned, or it's inoperable.
So you're telling me this happens, then there's enough occurrence that you've brought this forward?
Yes.
Okay.
And what happened also was that we had a person towed, and they challenged us and won because the Muni Code's not specifically addressing municipal lots.
Mr. Hotchkiss.
Thank you.
When somebody reports this or sees it, you put a ticket on the car for a while to let somebody respond or not?
Yes.
For how long?
Well, we wait a few days and see what happens. It doesn't happen that often, but when it does, it's a real problem.
And when it gets towed, it's how much to get it out of the lot? Do you know?
I'm not sure. We'd have to check with the towing
Is it
operator.
a police lot?
Yes.
Yeah. Pretty expensive. Okay.
It's hundreds of dollars, I think, once it's impounded. Yeah, it's a lot of money.
Well,
but-
there's definitely impetus not to do it, that's for sure. Let's move this forward, if I may.
Okay. I had a question, though, for Mr. Garza. Does this pertain to all lots, including the waterfront, or is this just strictly the...
Just the city-owned lots, the downtown parking lots, not the waterfront lots.
Okay, so the waterfront lot is a separate...
Councilmember Rouse, yes, it is separate, but about 2 years ago, there was a separate ordinance passed for a 72-hour parking limit in the waterfront lots. So this would make the downtown parking lots have the same rules as the waterfront lots.
Thank you for that clarification. It said city-owned. I wasn't sure if we were...
Mr. Chair and Mr. Garza, I'm lucky enough to have AAA insurance, so my car would be towed or fixed or whatever right away, but not everybody has that resources. And can you defend, if I can challenge you, why 2 hours and why you wouldn't give someone 24 hours, no inoperable longer than 2 hours? So somebody's car doesn't start and they need a new battery, maybe they can get their mechanic there in 6 hours, or I'm just asking why you picked 2 hours?
I think that's something we should change.
Seems reasonable.
Yes.
Change it to...
We're trying to mirror the 72-hour on the street.
Right. And perhaps, if I may, practically speaking, if a vehicle is inoperable, sooner or later the 72-hour time limit will catch up with them. So perhaps that restriction could be eliminated from the ordinance.
Well, if I may ask, then what are the water... How, to be consistent with the waterfront lots, what's the part of that?
I believe the waterfront lots only has a 72-hour restriction. I don't think there's anything about inoperable vehicles in there.
So I don't know about the committee, but it seemed reasonable to me to make that consistent.
I agree.
Ms. Murillo?
And change my
Thank you.
motion accordingly, yeah.
Okay.
Good point,
And
Ms. Murillo, thank you.
you second, then?
Good catch.
Okay, the recommendations are moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
And you've got it.
Thank you.
Thank you very